Every year, thousands of people die not because they lacked courage, not because they lacked strength, but because they trusted the wrong information at the worst possible moment. They did exactly what they were told to do. They followed the advice they had heard repeated so many times that it became invisible truth, the kind of knowledge that nobody questions because everybody already believes it. And that unquestioned belief, that silent assumption baked into every camping guide, every school safety drill, every viral survival thread online, became the weapon that killed them. This is not a story about bad luck. This is a story about systematically wrong information that has been passed down, repeated, and reinforced across generations, and the hidden science that finally exposes it for what it is: dangerous fiction dressed as common sense. Myth 1. Drink water from a running stream because moving water is safe. The first myth is one of the most seductive because it carries a grain of biological logic twisted just far enough to become lethal. The idea goes like this: running water, moving water, water that flows over rocks and through sunlight, is cleaner than stagnant water because movement prevents bacterial growth. It sounds reasonable. It even has a poetic appeal: the image of a clear mountain stream cutting through granite, cold and fast and pure. But the science tells a fundamentally different story, and the difference between the myth and the reality is the difference between hydration and organ failure. Giardia lamblia, Cryptosporidium parvum, and pathogenic E. coli strains do not care about the speed of the water they inhabit. These microscopic organisms travel downstream from animal carcasses, from fecal matter deposited miles above your position, from agricultural runoff that entered the watershed kilometers away from where you're kneeling with your cupped hands. The Centers for Disease Control and the World Health Organization both document consistent waterborne illness outbreaks traced directly to visually clear, fast-moving natural water sources. The danger is invisible. The water looks clean because your eyes are not electron microscopes. A single liter of pristine-looking mountain stream water can carry 10 million Cryptosporidium oocysts, and that organism is chlorine-resistant, meaning standard purification tablets will not eliminate it. The survival implication is absolute. No natural water source should ever be consumed without either boiling for a full rolling minute, using a 0.1 micron or finer filtration system, or applying iodine in combination with heat. The myth of moving water safety has sent dehydrated survivors to collect the one thing that accelerated their death. Myth 2. Rub frostbitten skin to restore circulation. The second myth is taught instinctively, almost reflexively, because it mirrors the logic of warming something cold with friction. You rub your hands together when they're cold. You feel the heat. So when you find someone with white, waxy, cold-damaged extremities, the impulse is immediate and feels compassionate. Rub the skin, generate heat, restore blood flow. This instinct, acted upon in good faith by thousands of well-meaning people, has caused direct tissue destruction and permanent disability in frostbite victims who would have otherwise recovered fully. Here is the actual physiology. When skin tissue freezes, the water inside and between the cells forms ice crystals. These crystals are microscopically jagged structures with sharp edges at the cellular level. When you apply mechanical friction to frozen tissue, you are forcing those jagged ice crystals to move through and against living cell membranes. The result is cellular rupture on a massive scale, the kind of tissue destruction that surgeons classify as mechanical trauma compounding cold injury. The American College of Emergency Physicians and Wilderness Medicine protocols from the Wilderness Medical Society both explicitly prohibit rubbing frostbitten tissue. The correct intervention is controlled, passive rewarming using water between 37 and 40 degrees Celsius, warm but not hot, applied steadily and without any friction or pressure. The survival implication extends beyond frostbite alone. It exposes a broader pattern. Human instinct, when applied to biological emergencies, frequently causes the exact damage it intends to prevent. Understanding the microscopic reality of injury changes the entire calculus of first response, and that shift in understanding is the line between a survivor and a casualty. The myths examined so far share a common structure. They feel correct. They draw from observable reality. Water moves, friction warms, and then extrapolate into a biological context where those surface observations completely break down. The remaining 5 myths follow this same architecture of plausible wrongness, and several of them involve emergency scenarios that are far more common than most people assume. Myth 3. Play dead during a bear attack. This instruction has been printed in hiking guides, repeated by park rangers operating from outdated protocols, and absorbed into public consciousness as settled fact. The reality is that it is a conditional truth applied universally, and that misapplication has cost lives. The critical variable that the simplified advice erases is species and behavioral context. Playing dead, the technical term is thanatosis, is a valid last resort response specifically to a defensive attack by a brown or grizzly bear that perceives you as a threat to its cubs or food source. In that specific scenario, going limp and protecting your neck signals that you are no longer a threat, and the animal may disengage. But a black bear attack operates on entirely different predatory logic. Black bears that attack humans in wilderness settings are frequently engaged in predatory behavior. They are not defending territory, they are hunting. Playing dead in front of a predatory black bear does not signal submission. It signals that the hunt is complete. Wildlife biologists at the North American Bear Center have documented case after case where victims who played dead during black bear attacks suffered fatal injuries, while those who fought back aggressively survived. The survival implication demands specificity. Identify the bear species before applying any response protocol, and if identification is impossible, fighting back aggressively is the statistically safer default because it disrupts predatory behavior regardless of species, while passive submission only benefits one scenario out of 2. Myth 4. Sucking venom out of a snakebite saves lives. This myth is so deeply embedded in popular culture that it appears in films, novels, and first aid kits that still ship cut and suck devices to this day. The image is dramatic and feels decisive, a fast response, a blade, a mouth pulling poison from the wound. It communicates action in a moment of terror. But toxicology dismantled this myth completely, and the mechanism of venom biology explains exactly why the intervention causes more damage than the bite alone. Snake venom, whether hemotoxic or neurotoxic, binds to tissue proteins and enters lymphatic circulation within seconds of injection. By the time a person has processed the shock of a bite, located a blade, made an incision, and applied oral suction, the venom has already migrated beyond the wound site into surrounding tissue and regional lymph nodes. The suction retrieves negligible venom quantities. Studies published in the Annals of Emergency Medicine measured recovery rates below 2% of injected venom volume even under ideal laboratory conditions. Meanwhile, the incision introduces infection risk, damages superficial veins and nerves, and oral suction introduces oral bacteria directly into an already traumatized wound. The correct protocol, validated by every major toxicology and emergency medicine authority globally, is immobilization of the affected limb below heart level, immediate evacuation toward definitive medical care, and removal of constricting items like rings and watches as swelling develops. Nothing else. The survival implication is that decisive-looking actions in emergencies frequently create the illusion of intervention while producing measurable harm. Myth 5. Find high ground during a flash flood. The directional logic seems unassailable. Water flows down. You go up. But flash flood dynamics in canyon and valley terrain operate with a hydraulic violence that makes simple elevation seeking genuinely fatal under specific and common geographic conditions. Flash floods in slot canyons and narrow gorges can arrive as a wall of water moving faster than a human being can run, generated by rainfall occurring miles away under completely clear local skies. The survivor who scrambles to a ledge 3 meters above the canyon floor may find themselves trapped as water rises past that ledge within minutes, with vertical walls offering no further escape. The correct principle is not high ground. It is high ground with continued vertical access. Emergency management science distinguishes between a static elevated position and an escape route to elevation. A ledge is a trap. A slope with continued upward mobility is survival terrain. Additionally, flood debris, logs, boulders, structural material, traveling at flood velocity represents lethal ballistic threat to anyone positioned at water's edge even above the waterline. Understanding flood hydraulics, not just flood direction, is what separates a position of safety from a position of delayed drowning. Myth 6. You can survive 3 days without water. The 3-day figure appears in every survival manual as a reliable threshold, but it is a statistical average derived from temperate conditions at rest, and it collapses catastrophically under real survival variables. A person exerting moderate physical effort in desert heat at 40 degrees Celsius can reach critical dehydration, inducing cognitive impairment within 6 hours. Decision-making degrades before thirst reaches conscious awareness. The survival implication is that water acquisition must be the first priority in any emergency, not shelter, not signaling, not food, because dehydration quietly dismantles the cognitive capacity needed to accomplish every other survival task, and it does so invisibly, before the victim understands what is happening to them. Myth 7. Signal rescuers only when you hear or see them. Passive signaling. Waiting until a helicopter is visible before lighting a fire or activating a signal wastes the single most valuable window of rescue opportunity. Search and rescue teams operate systematic grid patterns and rely on prepositioned signals to narrow search zones. A signal mirror reflection is visible to aircraft at distances exceeding 16 kilometers under clear conditions. A signal fire with green vegetation produces smoke detectable at similar ranges. Waiting until contact is confirmed means the aircraft has already passed your grid square. Continuous, persistent, preemptive signaling dramatically compresses rescue timelines according to documented SAR operational data. The myth of reactive signaling costs survivors days of unnecessary exposure, and in deteriorating conditions, those days are the difference between rescue and recovery of remains.